in paradise.
It's the old adage that nothing is more inspiring than a person who can turn tragedy into triumph. Our guest in the Jenleeion circle today is Brittney Ellis, who embodies turning tragedy into triumph. She started off life being able to see, even became a certified nursing assistant. But suddenly life threw her a major curveball. She had to start all over again. I'm really excited for her to be able to share her story with us today about how she's learned to overcome blindness and how she's going to continue trying to do her best. First, Brittney, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm really excited to hear the brightness and the exhilaration in your voice because, my goodness, on the surface, to look at your story, which we'll get into in a second, it stops people in their track,
Yes.
because it's not a typical sight to blindness story. There was a serious illness in the midst of it that caused you to get that way. So
Indeed.
Let's start back at the beginning. You went to high school, you get out, you become a certified nursing assistant. Life was normal. Take me to life being so-called normal at that time, and then the process to finding out what was going on with you that eventually led to your blindness.
Okay. So I graduated from Gwynn Park High School in Brandywine, Maryland. I went on to become a CNA, as you said, and I had started a new birth control. It was called Mirena, and I noticed that I started putting on weight very fast. And one day, I was like, man, I could keep hearing ringing in my ears. Why do my ears keep ringing? I was like, whatever. I have to go to work. I had 2 jobs at the time. I didn't have time to stop and figure out what it was, So as that continued, I started not feeling nauseous. I was having severe headaches, back pains. And I woke up one morning and I noticed that my right eye was like going dark. Like it was kind of like a tunnel. So it was slowly the tunnel was slowly closing, but it was only my right eye. So why, I don't know. I ignored it because I was like, I have to go to work. I have these bills to pay. I had 2 cars, 2 jobs, a house that I had to pay for. So I just couldn't stop. So finally it got so bad to the point where I can barely talk because my head was hurting so much. I had to call out of work a couple of days, and I was like, let me go to the doctor. So I went to the emergency room. I went to the emergency room every day for about a week, and they sent me home every time, and they told me, literally, that they don't have time for headache patients. They said, it's just a migraine headache.
Go home,
you'll be
take
fine.
Motrin,
Yes.
you'll be fine. My
and I'm
goodness.
like, no, something's not right. I'm like, I can't see, my vision's blurry, and this is not a normal headache. And it was the last time, about a week and a half later, I came back to the emergency room again, and this time my right eye was dark, nothing. And my left eye was on its way out. It was starting to tunnel like the right eye did. And I finally came across a doctor who was on duty that night who knew what was wrong. He was like, I think you have a pseudotumor. And from there, they sent me to Walter Reed in Bethesda. And they teamed me up with a neurologist and an ophthalmologist. And from there, it just took off.
Wow. So at this particular point, you're working 2 jobs, you're persistently going to the hospital, and they're telling you that, hey, it's mundane reason, go back home. And this doctor says to you, once your vision starts fading with the pain coupled with the fact that the vision loss, I think you may have a tumor.
It's not an actual tumor. It's my body thinks there's a tumor, but it's not, which they call it idiopathic intracranial hypertension, or a pseudotumor, meaning a make-believe tumor.
I see. And so you go to Walter Reed at that particular point. They do tests. Take us to that part of the story.
So I go to Walter Reed. They did a lumbar puncture, which is extremely painful. They take.
Describe it for our viewers, please.
I am. They take a extremely long needle. I can't tell you exactly how long because I couldn't look.
Now, I have a phobia of needles, so
Yes.
I'm regretting I asked you to explain it. Got me grabbing my wrist. Okay, so the lumbar did who now? Go ahead.
My mother explained to me that the needle was extremely long, and they take it and they put it in your lower back, right above, your behind, and they put it all the way up until the 4th and 5th vertebrae in your back, in your spine, and like it's a painful process. They numb it, but
You can feel it.
yeah, okay, you can feel it.
My
And it's
goodness.
like the most awkward feeling, and like, they're hitting nerves on the way, and so like your legs and your feet are twitching, and it's a horrible process.
I'm supposed to be journalistic and objective right now, but if you could see the facial expressions that you were
I'm so sorry. You
invoking.
asked me to explain.
I did.
I'm going to explain.
I did.
So when they finally get to the 4th and 5th vertebrae, they pop it open, and then they start draining the fluid. And when they started draining the fluid, I hear the doctors go, "Whoa!" And they hop back, and I'm like, me and my mom are like, "What?" My mom's like, "Oh my God!" She's like, "So much fluid was backed up that like the fluid was shooting out the needle, hitting the ceiling." So
Oh, wow.
I didn't explain what a pseudotumor is. A pseudotumor is when fluid builds up in the brain, in your skull, and you build up so much fluid that it starts to break things like. You could have a stroke, your brain could hemorrhage, and the first thing it attacks is your optic nerves, your eyes.
Yes.
So that's the first thing to go. Normally, that's the first thing to go. So what they have to do to relieve the fluid is the lumbar puncture that I just explained. So I was doing these lumbar punctures like every day. And then finally they were like, well, we can't keep doing this because introducing a needle into your spine is not good because the spinal fluid is sterile.
And it's delicate all by itself.
Yes.
And you could run the risk of paralysis.
Yes,
or
exactly.
Yeah.
So they put me on a pill called Topamax at first, and it wasn't working. So they upped it to something stronger. It was called Diamox. And the Diamox was working. And they also say they don't know why, but for some reason weight loss helps with this condition. So if you lose at least 10% of your body mass, the pseudotumor tends to go into remission. So I went and I lost about 100 pounds, at least like 80, 90, somewhere in there. And I went into remission. But that was in 2014. In 2017, I came out of remission, and I went through the whole process over again.
Now, between 2014 and 2017, was there no rhyme or reason why you came out of remission, or had you gained weight, or was it just a turn to?
So it could be a number of reasons, but I did gain weight. I gained some weight, and I had a steady workout regimen, but I went back to work because they were able to save my left eye.
Your left eye initially.
My right eye was a wrap from day one. It wasn't coming back. But my left eye, I was still able to drive. I was still able to go back to work, and I had regained the vision in my left eye. So I went back to work. I started back driving. Got back both my jobs back, moved back out, and life happened, and I started putting on a little bit of weight.
Right,
It's like
of course.
the smallest amount of weight.
Could make all the difference.
Yes. So I put on at least like 10 more pounds, 20 more pounds. Came right out of remission, and then I was actually in New York City visiting my grandmother. We were having a cookout, and I remember that day I was like telling my cousins, like, I can't see today, like I don't know what's going on in my eyes, And by that evening I was back in the hospital, but I ended up at Columbia Presbyterian in New York, in Manhattan, where they this time they took more drastic measures, more invasive. They did an optic eye nerve fenestration, where they cut slits in your optic nerves, and then they drain it out. And then like the slits, because they take time to heal, it will keep the pressure flowing through and through, because of the fluid buildup and the pressure.
Yeah.
So after I was in a hospital, I want to say for like a month. So they did that, and they noticed after a couple of days, the fluid was building back up. It didn't help. So they went in and they installed a VP shunt, which they installed the shunt through your skull, and it goes through my skull, over my right shoulder, and down to my abdomen. That worked, but that was a pretty invasive surgery, and I was in the hospital for about a couple of weeks after that.
And describing this, the shunt, essentially, the fluid.
Oh, the shunt.
It helps the fluid consistently drain into your abdomen?
Yes, so what it does is the shunt, every 2 hours it drains, and then it'll drain the fluid to my abdomen, and then I release it naturally.
And how long have you had the shunt? Since 2017?
Yes, since 2017.
Has it ever had to be modified, or once it's in, you've been set?
By the grace of God, no. Not yet.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And between 2014 and 2017, just to make sure that there's understanding there, again, you had returned to life. So you had 2 or 3 years of remission before it reemerged in 2017?
Yes.
Wow. And when all was said and done, Brittney was left with about 5% of vision in her left eye. And after that point, it was time to make a bit of a transition. At this point, you don't have usable vision.
I don't.
Or what we call adequate mobility vision to be able to navigate independently as a sighted individual. Our viewers will be reminded that I am totally blind. I've been totally blind since I was 9 years old. The disease that I have affected my optic nerves to where my optic nerves are destroyed. So much of Brittney's story hits home and makes a lot of sense to me. So with that being said, I think I was fortunate in the sense that I went blind when I was 9 years old, Brittney, right? Because at 9 years old, I hadn't experienced the rites of passage of things like driving. Right? Or things like working and being able to see. So I think as an adult, losing your vision as an adult, it's a greater sense of loss because you have a higher sense of things that you, quote unquote, have to lose.
Correct.
With that being said, thank you for your boldness. But I have a specific question. Now it's time to figure out, how am I going to attack life as a visually impaired person, or a person that's practically totally blind? What did you do?
I'm honestly still trying to figure it out. It's not easy getting back up on your feet once you acquire a disability. People don't take you seriously. Jobs don't want to hire you because you're a liability. So I decided that I was going to pave my own way. I decided one day, I just picked up my phone and started recording. And I started with TikTok. Well, I started with Instagram, and then I went over to TikTok, and I just blew up. Like, there were so many people saying, hey, I have the same condition, I'm going blind, or I am blind, or other people with other blindnesses, because it's a spectrum. And people were like, hey, you're really inspiring. You inspire me to, come out and be confident in who I am. And I said, you know what? I think this is my calling. Like, I was getting bombarded with messages and love, and I was like, this is my lane right here.
Wow. Now, you did go to an independent program.
Yes.
Being a sighted individual, previously sighted and having to go to how to learn things this way of life, right? Tell me about that experience.
That was interesting. It was a journey. It was a journey. One thing that was really hard to do was relinquishing power and letting accepting what happened and letting them teach me. I had to literally relearn everything: how to feed myself, how to clothe myself, how to walk. You would have thought I was a baby again. And that was a very humbling experience.
Further compounded by the fact that you couldn't see the same way.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And I felt like everything I loved was taken from me. Like, I've always been into fashion and makeup and hair, beauty. And I felt like I was like, well, how am I going to keep doing that? So I just found my own way around that. So.
You still do your own makeup?
I do.
That's excellent. I have a running joke that people always tell me that I look like I wear makeup, and I always joke with them and say, well, you'd find me a blind person who can effectively put on their own foundation, but it looks like I'm
you
sitting.
You found her. She's right here.
Well, I'm sorry, I won't let you put mine on though.
Why not? I got you.
You do?
I can do it.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Now you do what I do. You swear by the iPhone.
Love it.
The iPhone is, in the blindness community, typically referred to as the blind phone. There's a screen reader on the iPhone called VoiceOver that's in the accessibility settings that will literally convert text to speech. And a blind individual, once they're trained on how to use it, can do pretty much everything sighted individuals can do with a telephone, whether it's mobile banking, word processing, texting, TikToking, using Facebook, or doing what's my favorite pastime, listening to a lot of mindless YouTube videos. The learning curve of you getting to use a touch screen device as a person who can't see the screen the same way. How was that?
Actually, for me, it was not a hard process. I taught myself how to do it.
Well, I did too, but yeah, go ahead.
No, well, I went to a training center and they actually teach you how to do it. And some people really couldn't teach themselves. So
I see.
you're very smart. Not all of us have that time.
Or just dedicated, because
right.
it took a long time.
And that's what I was getting ready to say. I was so dead set on using my phone again. It took me about 4 hours to figure it out. And I had it down pat in 4 hours.
Wow. And one of the things that's funny is that my family has been listening to my screen readers for so many years.
And they always
that,
say it's too fast.
Well, no, not anymore. They used to say it's too fast. What is it saying? But more and more they can understand it.
Really?
Yeah, I have it at 85
Mine is
speed.
on 100, baby. I need you to stay on my business. I keep it fast because sighted people nosy.
Well, they can understand it at 85, so I typically, in order to have some degree of privacy, I've gone to 95 and 100 a lot of times when I need privacy. But the thing is, I miss those days when it was at 50 or 40 and they couldn't understand it. What is it? Is this speaking English? What is that? What is it?
It sounds like a chipmunk in your phone.
Yeah, and now my best friend and family and everybody can understand what it's saying, and I'm like, okay, this is not going to work.
Okay, some gotta give.
Yeah,
get you some
AirPods.
AirPods.
Yeah, the AirPods, and this goes far beyond using a screen curtain at this point.
I was going to say screen curtain, but my family still can't understand it. So.
Oh yeah, that will be.
They're not trying either.
And the thing is, I don't think my family was trying, though. I just think it's because, well, then when it irritates them, they'll be like, because sometimes I won't have headphones and I forget, and I'm using.
They're like, can you put your headphones on? That's so annoying. I know. And my family hates the audio description on movies.
Oh, my family loves it, and the reason why they loved it is because they've learned to tune it out. But I have caught people in my family using it, even when I wasn't in the room.
I heard you listen to the audio description.
Yeah.
I heard you in there.
Because sometimes when we're watching movies and the audio description is on, and audio description is a service where a professional narrator will sort of narrate what's happening visually on the screen for blind individuals. So it's like you're listening to the movie, and all of a sudden your family member will go, I didn't even notice the red box in the corner.
Exactly. I swear, I like to go watch old movies that I've seen already with the audio description on. Because you don't realize how much you miss. Like in Friday, I never realized that the part where she was like, on the phone with him, and I forgot what she was saying, but there was a guy in the bed. And the audio description said that. And I was like, I never noticed there was another man in her bed.
Yeah, exactly.
I never noticed that.
But I will say one of the things I found interesting, and this might go back to the fact of the sort of racial place that we live, they've kind of changed it, but I used to get really irritated that for the audio descriptions, whenever they would talk about, whenever it was a character that entered that wasn't black, they would just say a man.
Now they say dark skin.
They would just say a man wearing a blue shirt enters. And the only time there would be an identification of it is when it was a black person. Then it was a black man, a black woman. But if they weren't, it was just literally called man or woman. I thought that was interesting. But luckily it's changing.
Right.
Although, like when I say, a beefy bloke in a black shirt walks in, and it's just like a beefy bloke.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things I can say that I'm very happy about is that your spirit is vibrant, right?
Yes.
You remind me of myself, and I think it's a gift to have been able to speak to you. I have much respect for you because, again, I recognize that it is a greater sense of loss and a greater sense of independence that you lose. But when you get on the other side of it, I can tell you wholeheartedly that the sky is definitely still the limit, Brittney.
Yep.
And with your soul and the energy that you're exuding, you don't need to be taught on that.
No.
So you have literally left me inspired, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with you.
Thank you.
Where can people follow you on social media, Brittney?
So my social media handles, my TikTok handle is 3_blindbeauty_. Same with my Instagram, 3_blind_beauty_, and I have a YouTube that is just Blind Beauty.
Well, fantastic. Well, Mario Bonds and Brittney Ellis, two blind beauties sitting next to each other in the Jenleeion circle. Looking forward to seeing you guys. Bye-bye, everybody.
Does anyone still believe in paradise?